bottom of the page. The chat is also available for you to engage in conversations. And we encourage you to take advantage of that so you can join with the other participants and share with each other, ask questions. We may not come to questions until the end, but we encourage you to take advantage of the chat. With that said, we are, again, super excited that you're here with us today. When we started planning POD 2021, the 46th POD conference, we decided fairly early that POD 21 was going to be another virtual event because we continued working with many unknowns ranging from questions about safety to budgets. And despite this early decision to plan a virtual POD, this year's planning process presented us again with a range of unknowns and a range of decisions that we had to make, and also several new challenges and questions. And these included, but are not limited to, an ongoing effort to make our process more inclusive and equitable, to make the conference more engaging based on feedback that we received last year, and also to just streamline some of the conference logistics. And we found this year that we made a lot of progress, but those are all still ongoing processes and procedures that we're still working out. And so we are excited that you're here with us, and we are looking forward to your feedback at the end of the conference too, to keep learning from your experience. But let's get back to POD 2021. We're excited to be able to gather with you today, and we look forward to spending the next few days with you. And so I hand it over to my co-chair, Germán.
Thank you, Claudia. So, hi, my name is Herman Vargas. I'm like Claudia, I'm a co-chair for the conference this year. I wanted to just give you some information, but we want to point out that for the second year in a row, we have broken the attendance record for POD virtual conferences with over 960 attendees. So again, that's the most of any POD virtual conference ever. Like Claudia mentioned, even though we knew that the conference would be online this year, and we were better prepared for that, but there were still some challenges and some changes that we wanted to make. So one example, we started the year by revising our reviewer selection and training process, and doubling down on previous enhancements to our diversity and inclusion measures, including a very successful trial of our new review protocol to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Knowing that so many folks, amazing folks, chose to attend and present at the conference really made it worthwhile. But we're hoping that next year we'll get to see all of you in person, of course. Before we get into that, we want to recognize some folks that make this year's conference possible.
Yes, and so as you may know, POD is a conference that's planned and organized entirely by volunteers. And so we are incredibly grateful to all who have helped us make POD 21 happen and to make it special and to include all those special touches. And we want to start out by giving them a special thanks. And so first off, and Germán is muted.
Etiquette gets in the way of, so first off, we want to thank, of course, Tammy McCoy and Jared Quinn, our infatigable, that's not an easy word, conference co-chairs, program co-chairs. So their innovative ideas and their sense of good humor and their dedication to POD and the conference during these two very interesting years
I have to send this to you. I'm just going to forward it.
Have been invaluable. And we should also know that they will be stepping up as conference chairs for next year's conference. So you'll hear more from them at our closing ceremony on Friday.
And we also want to thank Antonia Levy and Jose Muniz, who have been incredibly helpful on the back end, building the conference website, integrating the conference app Sketch, managing the proposal process and data. And without them, this would not have been possible.
And our POD web developer, Ken Wilson, for his support in bringing the conference website overall into fruition.
Then we want to have a shout out to Gay Webb, our pod administrative person who has been managing all the registrations on the back end, providing support along the way to the conference team, as well as many of you in the registration process, getting people onto Sketch, solving all kinds of problems and emergencies that come up. So thank you, Gay. And as well, we want to thank Keegan Sinanen, who has been sharing information about the conference on all the social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook. Look on Twitter, look on Facebook, look on Instagram, or if you're not on social media, you can also check in on the conference website for some of those updates.
We also want to thank Pamela Roy, who is our diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. She helped us develop self-paced training for proposal reviews and promoting guidance on offering more inclusive and constructive feedback. So Pamela was also instrumental in developing, managing, and assessing the team-based review process that we implemented this year. We also want to thank our diversity and inclusion coordinators for this year's conference, Mais Imad and Artenes Samkian, who have created presenter resources for inclusive presentation practices.
And we want to have a special shout out also to Hyung Lee, who is returning this year as our volunteer coordinator. So she found all the volunteers to help with moderating sessions, but she's also been the one who is setting up all of the Zoom on the back end, making sure that everything is working, communicating with presenters, and making sure that those of you who are presenting have all the information you need to get your session started and going. And so just as a little spoiler, you'll be seeing more of Hyung in the future. She's going to be taking on an important role in next year's conference too.
And along those lines, we also want to thank our session coordinators who reviewed feedback and made recommendations for proposals to be accepted for each of the session types. And our proposal reviewers who, after completing our new self-paced reviewer training, helped us in the selection of outstanding session proposals and provided constructive feedback to their colleagues.
And we want to thank the many other volunteers. Again, POD is a conference that runs entirely with volunteer support. And without all of you, this would not have possible. Many volunteers have contributed in a range of different ways, planning special sessions, selecting awards, organizing social and wellness sessions. And of course, we also want to thank all of the presenters and the attendees. Without you, there wouldn't be POD. So thank you for joining us this week. And we are incredibly grateful that you found the time to be with us in mind and spirit, even though maybe not in person. That will be next year.
And last but definitely not least, we want to thank our sponsors for POD 21 and acknowledge their generous support. You can check out their information on the conference website.
Yes. And so at this point, we want to copy a link that's not copying. Okay, it did work. At this point, we want to spend some time to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. Even though we are not gathered in a central physical place, we want to acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all the indigenous peoples that call the lands from which we are joining today their home, and affirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and expanding our own understanding of indigenous peoples and cultures by sharing. We want to encourage you to make the same commitment by sharing your own introduction and land acknowledgement in the Zoom chat. The website that I just posted, native-lands.ca, is a valuable resource to start your own personal inquiry. And I want to start with my own message. My name is Claudia Cornejo Happel, and today I'm joining from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida, which is located on the homeland of the Timucua and the Seminole Indians, many of whom were forcibly removed from their land under the Indian Removal Act, and fiercely contested this act in the First, Second, and Third Seminole Wars. As a visitor on this land, on their land, I strive to deepen my understanding of local indigenous communities and the impact my privilege and use of natural and other resources has on indigenous and other minoritized communities throughout the Americas.
Thank you, Claudia. So, like I said, my name is Herman Vargas Ramos, and I work for Otterbein University in Westerville, Ohio. The indigenous inhabitants of the land around my campus include the Mia Mia or Miami Nation, the Wyandot or Huron Nation, and the Mingo people, all of whom were forcefully displaced, first by European colonizers and later by the United States government through the Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the Dawes Act of 1887. As a mixed race Puerto Rican with Spanish, Black, and Taino heritage, I acknowledge that I am a visitor in this land and that the privileges, spaces, and resources that I enjoy here are the result of European colonialism and of white violence against indigenous and enslaved peoples. At the same time, I stand in solidarity with the native inhabitants of the Ohio River Valley and with their descendants who to this day must cope with the trauma and the sense of loss caused by the displacement or extermination of their ancestors.
And I believe Hoke wanted to share too.
There we go. Thank you for unmuting me. Couldn't do it myself. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Hogue Holmgren, Executive Director of the POD Network, and I would like to acknowledge that the POD Network office sits uninvited upon ancestral lands in the territories of Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne peoples. Further, I'd like to acknowledge that 48 contemporary tribal nations are historically tied to the state of Colorado. And additionally, there are more than 60,000 American Indian Alaska natives currently living on the land that's now called Colorado, and more than 40,000 in the Denver metro area, all representing over 200 tribal nations.
So we are reading through some of the posts that you have contributed in the chat, and we want to invite you all to join us in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each in our own way try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Talking about reflection. In the call for proposals this year, we ask you to think about our role as educational developers in helping our institutions, faculty, and learners evolve beyond crisis by developing and promoting practices, attitudes, and values that allow us to connect to the future. We have, at that point, we thought we might be beyond the crisis. We have not yet moved beyond crisis or multiple crises. However, over the past few months, we've continued to grapple with and shape the new routines and priorities that have emerged as a response to the global pandemic and other crises we confronted in 2020. We've been engaged in planning for a future that will be different than what we expected and envisioned before the pandemic, before 2020, and we have strived and continue to do so to capitalize on opportunities to turn these challenges towards positive change. We hope that attending POD this week may provide you with an opportunity to revitalize by reconnecting with colleagues and engaging in reflective practice as you present on successful programs, practices, and research, and listen to and exchange ideas with colleagues as you ask questions and contemplate the potential for using these ideas presented on your campuses. We strive to organize the conference schedule that creates spaces for engagement and connection. For example, several of you yesterday have already attended the Birds of a Feather sessions, which are intended to promote conversations between people on a shared topic of interest. Some of you will have attended the introduction to POD for first-time attendees. And some of you might have attended one of the social and wellness sessions or are planning to do so in the future. There is karaoke on Thursday. just letting you know. We hope that these sessions, as well as the interactive live sessions, the roundtables, the workshops in a box that we have planned for the next week, will allow you to connect and engage with the group of colleagues who share your interests. To engage, we encourage you to participate in all of the live chats and sessions. We encourage you to also peruse the many on-demand sessions and click the join the conversation button there to engage with presenters and other attendees, ask questions. Or for the on-demand sessions, we also have several Q&A sessions scheduled for the next few days where you can actually interact with the presenters, ask questions live, participate in discussions around shared topic of interest. Sketch, the conference app, also allows you to find contact information for all the attendees and allows you to connect with them during the conference or after. And each day we are planning on sending out an email with updates for the day that's coming up. And so handing it over to Herman.
Thank you, Claudia. So we'd like to spend a minute or two showing you around the conference website. I'm going to begin sharing my screen now. So in keeping with the conference theme, the conference website for this year has evolved. And now our web presence includes the website as well as the conference app, Sketch, which has already been mentioned and you've probably been exploring. Sketch has all of the session information and the materials that lets you create your own Sketch. You'll get it. And engage with conference materials and participants in the ways that we've mentioned. The conference homepage, which you can see here, it gives you access to all the different areas of the website and will be updated frequently with new information. Just in case, that's at conference.podnetwork.org. So to take full advantage of the website, you'll want to log into Sketch at sketch.com, and you'll see where we have links to that in a minute, so that all the session information shows up for you when you browse the website. So of course, you can also access the conference schedule via Sketch directly through their website or the app. But the conference website is meant to be your kind of landing place for that. A few highlights. So the virtual lobby, which you can access over here, has a public chat window that lets you connect with other conference participants. You just have to fill out your name and then join that. Start new conversations and just hang out between sessions if you so choose. And then there's also an embedded Twitter feed showing original and retweeted messages from the Pod Network account. Of course, we also have the conference schedule. So the main schedule page sort of pipes in all the information from sketch.com, so you can navigate the schedule in your web browser. You've probably been exploring this, but there are two things that I want everybody to see. First is this schedule view button over here, that if you select the expanded view, opens up all of the session abstracts as well as the titles and presenters, so that you can just view more information about the sessions on a given day. And then the other thing that I want to point out are the filters that are over here on the right-hand side that let you see all the sessions filtered by session type, as well as by audience and topic. Finally, if you need any help navigating the website, or you're having any issues at all, really, with the conference experience, you can visit our help page, where we have information about how to contact the conference team in real time, whether it's for administrative issues or technical problems or anything like that. And this is also where you can find login information for Sketch and a tech support chat where you can ask questions live. So these are just some highlights from the conference website. So please take a look around, explore, and if you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you. And now we're coming to the part where you've all been waiting for, because I now get to introduce our wonderful pod president, Francine Glazer. And she will give her presidential address in just a moment. Again, just a few housekeeping items. I will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, please post it to the chat and I will collect all the questions that come up and we'll reserve some time at the end for them to be addressed. And that way you know what to expect. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Francine Glazer. She is the Associate Provost for Educational Innovation and the founding director of the Center for Teaching and Learning at New York Institute of Technology, where she also oversees the libraries. Prior to joining New York Tech in 2008, she was a professor of biological sciences at Kean University for 16 years and the assistant director of the Center for Professional Development. Fran has been actively working with faculty members on issues of teaching and learning since 1993. She currently serves on the Executive Advisory Board of the International Higher Education Teaching and Learning Association and is a member of the Editorial Review Board of Innovative Higher Education. She previously served as president of the New Jersey Faculty Development Network and is the editor of Blended Learning Across the Disciplines, Across the Academy, published by Stylus Publishing as part of a series edited by James Rem. A biologist in training, Fran holds a PhD in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology from the University of Colorado in Boulder, and a BS magna cum laude with thesis honors from Tufts University. She pursued a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of California, Irvine, under a National Institute of Health National Research Service Award, and earned a Master Online Teacher Certificate from the University of Illinois. Her current areas of interest include faculty mentoring, future thinking, and the ways that higher education can adapt to respond to the needs of adult learners. I'm happy to present and turn it over to Fran Glazer.
Thank you, Claudia. The first thing I'm going to do is hide my Zoom, so I am glad you are monitoring the chat. Thank you. I'm joining you today from my home, which is situated on the ancestral lands of the Munsee Lenape Nation. With more than 2,800 members, the Munsee Lenape is the largest and most vibrant of the original Lenape still living on ancestral lands, which once included southeastern New York, eastern Pennsylvania, and all of New Jersey. I offer my respect to their elders, past and present, acknowledge their deep connection to the land and the land's integral connection to their being, and extend that respect to all Indigenous peoples. Let me add my own welcome to that of the conference team and my thanks to our conference co-chairs, Claudia Cornejo Happel and Herman Vargas Ramos, program chairs Tammy McCoy and Jared Quinn, and conference website developers Antonia Levy and Jose Muniz, who have been ably assisted as always by our executive director, Hoag Holmgren, and our administrative assistant, Gay Webb. They've worked incredibly hard for the last year preparing this conference, along with all the people they named and more, the session coordinators, dozens and dozens of volunteers who've done countless tasks, reviewing proposals, back-end work on Zoom, and moderating the sessions this week. I especially want to point out that this team figured out and launched our first fully online conference last year and graciously came back for a repeat performance and made it even better. Please join me in thanking them, either in the chat or with a reaction. Or clapping in front of the camera, that's good too, I like that. The conference team's already been meeting to discuss the 2022 conference. Come to the closing ceremony on Friday for some hints about next year. This year, we're delighted to be able to expand the number of affinity groups at the conference. Thanks to the work of an ad hoc committee composed of Carol Herney, Kim Humphrey, Laura Pipe, Claudia Cornejo Happel, and Tammy McCoy, an invitation went out last week to all conference attendees. The groups are designed to build connections among members with shared identities and will provide space where colleagues can meet, discuss shared needs and interests, identify leadership, and plan ongoing events with organizational support. If you did not fill out the form but are interested in participating, check the conference program for Wednesday, November 17th. You're welcome to join any group that aligns with your lived identity. Also this year, I want to acknowledge the work of consultant Pamela Roy and another ad hoc committee, which included Lynn Eaton, Chad Hershuk, Cheryl Richardson, and Carol Subino Sullivan, as well as members of the conference team. They created orientation materials for proposal reviewers related to diversity, inclusion, and equity, and they helped develop a new collaborative team reviewing structure for the proposals that had significant DEI content. They then assessed both the orientation and the review process, and Pamela submitted a detailed report on the entire process to the conference team with recommendations for improvements for next year. Thank you to the 30 individuals who participated in the new collaborative review process of 90 proposals. It has been an unprecedented 18 months, and we've each faced our own set of challenges. What astonishes me and sustains me is the way the members of this network rally to support each other, even while supporting our campuses. Someone posts a question on the discussion group and people answer, sharing wisdom and sharing resources. Even with all the demands on each of us on our time, energy, and attention, we make time, energy, and attention for each other. That is one of the things I most value about this organization. That said, our singular perspective, our expectations, our energy, and the constraints we each have will all combine to influence how we show up to this conference, the sessions we choose, the amount we participate, the times we choose to slip away to a meeting on our campus, what we take away from this week. I hope you'll find things here that will help you in your work and in your own professional development. And I want to emphasize 2 points. First, however you show up, we are all the richer for your presence here. And second, this conference, this organization strives to be a responsive, dynamic, flexible entity that you can shape to your needs. Yesterday at the new members welcome reception, I characterized my initial and my continuing experience of the POD network as one of people being incredibly generous with sharing their work. The prevailing attitude that I encounter is, here, take this, make it better. I'd love to see what you do with it. And today it occurs to me that the same is true of the organization. And so I say to you, take it and make it better. Take this conference and make it yours. Take this organization and make it yours. So to help you do that, I want to highlight some of the activities of the past year, and I invite you to see yourself in this work. If there is a committee or a special interest group that intrigues you, join the meeting next week and help to shape our future. The newly renamed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee has expanded the popular Donald H. Wolf Diversity Travel Fellowship Program to incorporate a mentoring program in which new and returning fellows form mentoring pods. The committee has also started a program of mini grants. You may have seen the call for proposals go out over the summer. These mini grants provide seed funding for research projects, for resource development, and for programming that focuses on advancing equity and inclusion and dismantling racism in its many forms, especially as it relates to the teaching and learning environment. Last year, the Professional Development Committee, PDC for short, tabled its POD Live sessions and instead hosted a series of informal check-ins in recognition of the exhaustion so many of us faced. The small colleges and centers special interest group did the same, setting up weekly drop-in sessions and created a rich set of shared resources. and I suspect other special interest groups did the same as well. I referred to Pod Live, but didn't define it yet. Pod Live sessions are interactive webinars intended to support educational developers from various institutional types at various career stages. They're open to all members and occur throughout the year. This year, Pod Live will resume in spring of 2022. The committee is currently working on a proposal process to make the series more inclusive and the selection process more transparent. Look for a call for session proposals after the conference. Pod Connects is also thriving. Pod Connects helps members broaden their networks and support each other in our work as educational developers by placing people into small groups of 4 to 5 individuals who commit to meeting at regular intervals to support each other as they each advance their professional goals and their well-being. Currently, groups are being formed based on career stage as an educational developer or on interest in the scholarship of educational development. To date, over 260 Pod Network members have joined a group. Groups are formed in January, April, and August, so consider signing up for one after the conference. Kudos to the team at Pomona College and University of La Verne for transforming the Institute for New Educational Developers from the in-person event originally planned for 2020 into a virtual offering in 2021. Going forward, the PDC will consider when and whether to offer in-person institutes, which many of you have said are transformative, and when and how to offer virtual events, which have the potential to reach audiences that found it difficult to show up in person. Similarly, we're learning from teams that lead the pod-sponsored pre-conference sessions like Getting Started about the particular affordances of doing those sessions virtually. If you have benefited from any of those sessions and want to give something back, join the PDC at its meeting on Monday, November 15th at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. Pod Scholarly Reads has continued its emphasis on the wicked problem of grading. In summer 2021, Pod Scholarly Reads hosted a pair of discussions on ungrading, the latest in a variety of approaches to addressing inequities and shortcomings with traditional grading. This is an ongoing challenge in higher education, balancing the need to assess and report learning and the potential that assessment practices, and particularly grading practices, may interfere with learning. This winter, join them as they explore more non-traditional approaches to the wicked problem of grading. The editorial team at To Improve the Academy has rotated. I'd like to thank Lindsay Bernhagen for 4 years of dedicated service to the journal, shepherding it to a new online platform and implementing an open access model. Michael Palmer and Lindsay Wheeler have begun a 2-year term as editors of the journal, and we also welcomed 2 new associate editors to the editorial team this summer, Dorisa Grant and Dana Grossman-Lehman. One major project the editorial team is undertaking this year is to rethink the processes, structure, and functioning of the journal, especially in how it's positioned with respect to the Pod Network. To help with this work, the editors have established a transitional editorial board that's in the early stages of defining governance structures for the journal, including roles and responsibilities for an editorial board, contributing editors, and the editors and associate editors. One of the most visible aspects of their work, announced last week, is the newly redesigned website for the journal. The goal of the redesign is to create an attractive and informational site, emphasizing improved clarity and transparency to the submission, review, and publication processes. Soon they'll be adding a host of resources to support authors and reviewers. Keep checking the journal's webpage to see continued improvements. The Strategic Planning Committee has also been quite busy. Every committee and special interest group has been asked to appoint an assessment liaison who will coordinate assessment of that committee or special interest group's work and work with the other liaisons and the Strategic Planning Committee to assemble the information into a more holistic view of how we as an organization are meeting our strategic goals. Last spring, the committee created a preliminary snapshot of the assessment work that currently takes place on committees and special interest groups, and learned that there are some very impressive pockets of assessment already going on. It's really wonderful to see the expertise of our members applied to the work we do as an organization. Examples range from special interest groups conducting needs assessments so that they can focus their priorities, to committees conducting program evaluations to gather formative feedback, and examining reported benefits from awards and events. The committee also looked at the alignment of committee and special interest group charges with the strategic plan and learned that most of the strategic actions are being addressed by multiple committees and special interest groups, which is certainly what we would hope. One key gap was uncovered, however, in reported committee activities related to empowering and preparing POD Network members, that would be you, all of us, from a variety of institutions and backgrounds to serve in leadership roles in higher education. To learn more about the work of this committee and how you personally can play a role in shaping the POD Network, see the on-demand session from Carol Herney and Beth Luoma called Pathways to POD Leadership. The Governance Committee undertook a deep review of the governance manual last spring under Angela Lindsay's leadership and asked every committee and special interest group to interrogate its pathways to leadership to make them more inclusive. At the June 2021 meeting of the core committee, there were many changes incorporated into the governance manual, and this work is still continuing. Also at the June meeting, the core committee approved creation of 2 new ad hoc committees, one on data governance and the other on affinity groups, and of 2 new special interest groups. The Earth-Centered Special Interest Group works to advance Earth-centered pedagogy, to empower centers for teaching and learning to model sustainable practices, and to promote a more sustainable POD network, including our annual conference. Their initial meeting is on Monday, November 15th at 4:30 Eastern Time. So drop by if you'd like to learn more. The second new special interest group is called Co-Creation Through Partnerships. This group emphasizes, promotes, and supports the creation of fruitful partnerships among students, faculty, staff, and administrators. They seek to engage all stakeholders as co-creators and active collaborators in educational development in an effort to enhance teaching, improve student learning, and generate scholarship in educational development. Their initial meeting is on Tuesday, November 16th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and they welcome all interested folks to join them. Remember, you can go to any of the meetings next week. The committees and the special interest groups are open. Most of them are actively seeking new members. It's okay to go just to check it out. See what's happening, see if it's a good fit for you. And if it's not, leave that meeting and try another. This list is just a small fraction of what's happening at the POD network. Most of the committees and all the special interest groups are open to everyone, whether you've been a member of the POD network for 10 years, 20 years, Or like someone I met yesterday, 2 days. I want to reiterate, Pod Network is a member-driven organization. Our strength lies in the diversity and the energy of you, our members. That said, I recognize that you each have your own experience of the Pod Network. And I recognize that we have some work to do to make the Pod Network a truly multicultural organization. Like thousands of other organizations around the country, we are grappling with these issues and working to make the Pod Network an anti-racist and equitable organization. To this end, the core and executive committees have undertaken a concerted effort to become more knowledgeable about ourselves and others as we strive to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to examine our own organizational biases, structures, policies, and processes to ensure we live up to our stated value of equity. The core committee worked with Norm Jones, then of Amherst College and now interim chief diversity officer at Haverford College, in the summer and early fall of 2020, and strategized ways to establish and strengthen a culture which values difference in all its forms as a strength and an asset. We also worked with two of POD's past presidents, Christine Stanley of Texas A&M and Matthew Willett of Cornell University, in the spring and summer of this year. We'll all have the opportunity to participate in a plenary session with them on Thursday, and it will surely give you new ways to think about your own work. Christine and Matt engaged the core committee using a multicultural organizational development framework to structure our conversations about the work we are engaged in now, the aspirations we have for the Pod Network, and some immediate next steps we can take to build trust as we work to improve our organizational policies, practices, and processes. Donna Ellis, when president, reported frequently on this work over the 2021 year, and my email last month summarized a semester-long process to identify and retain a consultant to help us identify our specific strengths, needs, and opportunities for positive change, conduct a data and document review, and hear from you, our members, using a combination of surveys, interviews, and focus groups. The email is available on the website, as is the request for proposals we issued as part of our process. We're partnering with Think Again Training and Consulting to engage in this work. First, let me tell you a bit about Think Again, and then I want to talk about how you can get involved. Think Again's work is based on a social justice education model. When it comes to working with an organization such as ours, they use tools such as the Multicultural Organizational Development Framework, and they pay particular attention to both the organization, the policies, roles, and services, and the community, the network of individuals in relationship. Currently, Think Again is engaging with us in a pre-assessment phase. They are reviewing documents, the governance manual, committee and special interest group reports, conference programs, and feedback to learn about our past, our present, and our future aspirations. Most important in the process is that we will hear from you, our members, as to how you experience the Pod Network and how Pod can best support you in your own work. There will be many ways you can get involved and many degrees of involvement. For starters, I hope you will all respond to the survey. We also anticipate having focus groups, and that Think Again may want to interview some people to dive more deeply into a particular area. Pod Network is your organization and your experiences matter. As we move forward, I want to make sure we create brave spaces where we can have difficult conversations. We anticipate there will be some short-term working groups, and the ad hoc committee on affinity groups is also looking for volunteers. We're also in the initial stages of putting together a small and diverse group to serve as a change advisory team. This group will partner with Think Again, meeting monthly to provide feedback about work in progress and where to focus efforts, to generate ideas, and to help catalyze change. Who can be on the change advisory team? You can be on the change advisory team. We envision this group being broadly representative, including both new and experienced members, especially including people not yet involved in committee work, people with varied educational backgrounds, and people who have traveled different pathways into this profession. We're eager to include people who may not yet see themselves as leaders in POD, yet who absolutely have the knowledge, the skills, and perhaps most importantly, the heart to further the work of this organization and help us enact our values: collaboration, equity, and evidence. What form might the recommendations take? We don't know yet. It depends on your needs as expressed through this process. What do I personally hope for? I hope that we will embed an equity mindset and liberatory values into our work, both internal and outward facing. I hope that everyone in this organization feels welcomed and strengthened by your involvement with the POD network. I hope that we will reach a point where other organizations look to us as a model of how to be a learning organization, one that continually strives to be truly inclusive and equitable. I hope that we continue to support each other in our work as educational developers and change makers because of our differences, because we are all enriched by knowing each other, because we all have intrinsic value. And most of all, I hope you will join in this work. So I say to you again, take this organization and make it better. Take this organization and make it yours. I can't wait to see what you do with it. Let's move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. And so I've been monitoring the chat to see if we have questions coming in. So far, we have only one question, and I will share that with you in a moment. But I do want to encourage everybody who is with us right now to take advantage of the chat to ask any questions that you might want Fran to think about and respond to, or come back to, move, like take forward into the next year. And so the first question that we have in the chat is, what are some references, or what can you share something more about multicultural organizational development framework? What does it look like? Or maybe there are some references that we can share with POD moving forward.
So I can share, but I think the best way to share would be to suggest that you go to the plenary on Thursday by Matt and Christine, because they are the experts, not me. And it will be a great session.
And I will post the link to that session into the chat in just a moment. Any other questions? Oh, and Matt just shared and confirmed that they will address that in the plenary on Thursday. We are very excited that Matt and Christine could join us this year and add this valuable insight for everybody. So a new question, Fran, can you talk a bit more about what it means to you for POD to be a learning organization?
To me, it means that we are continually interrogating who we are, what we do, how we do it, what our members need, how to do it, whatever it is at the moment, more inclusively and more equitably. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. So I want us to keep moving forward.
And this is a question that may also be more, that may also be addressed in Matt and Christine's plenary on Thursday, but I will throw it out there just in case you have any ideas. The question is, do you have any ideas for implementing DEIE initiatives in a state that is hostile towards this work? Matt and Christine, you're getting pointers for Thursday, I think.
I am speechless, but I'm going to invite those of you who do have ideas to put them in the chat.
Yes, and I think that's a great idea. I think that's just what you said, friend, right? We have this collective expertise and knowledge and experiences and ideas. And so if any of you have ideas for Mandy, who asked the question about implementing diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives in the states that are hostile, please, I encourage you to post to the chat, or maybe even find each other on Sketch and reach out to each other, message each other, email each other, propose a presentation for POD 2022. We'd love to hear that.
Or a Birds of a Feather group.
Or that, yes.
How do you propose a Birds of a Feather group?
So, well, so POD 2022, we'll see what happens in POD 2022. Generally, the Birds of a Feather are proposed through a separate review process, though. And some people in the chat are recommending that maybe instead of Birds of a Feather, it could be an affinity group that is an ongoing, because I think one of the goals for the affinity groups is that it's not just a conference thing, but it's an ongoing conversation. And so maybe an affinity group for people who are working in these difficult contexts, maybe something to think into. This is a great question. And I will pass it on to Fran, but I also invite everybody in the session to respond in the chat. Jen is asking, I'm a faculty developer at an institution without a center. What resources should I take advantage of at POD for guidance, resources, sympathy? What recommendations do you have for faculty developers at campuses or institutions without an official center?
Well, one thing that I would recommend, I'm looking on the website and I can't look for the link and talk at the same time. So Claudia, you have an assignment. Right. We do have some starter kits on the POD website for starting a center. There's also collaborative work with ACE Network to create a matrix for a center. And I hear you saying you don't have a center. One of the values in using that to assess your current state at your institution is it gives you a benchmark frame from 2 highly regarded organizations of where your target should be. There are a lot of people on the list and in this conference who in the past couple of years have been starting centers at their institution. Thank you. Excellent job finding that link. And perhaps if you can identify yourselves in the chat, people who recently started centers, there's another networking opportunity. I'd also suggest going to the small colleges and centers special interest group. They are a tremendous support for individuals working alone at an institution.
And I'm seeing several people contributing to the chat and extending invitations. Also just saying, hi, I'm at a new center. Maybe and And that could be a great resource, right? Somebody who just started a center could have great ideas for what are the steps, what are the challenges, what are the obstacles. So we encourage you all to, again, reach out to each other. I think we can be the greatest resource for each other. And I think for me, POD has always been that, being able to find people who are interested in the same things and really so generous with resources and support. So yeah, I think we're seeing a few people on here saying new center folks, small colleges, small centers, special interest group is another resource, I think. So yeah. And I'm
Derek,
seeing,
thank you for mentioning the Pod Speaks papers. Those are also really helpful.
and we're seeing lots of comments. No questions recently. Does anybody have any other questions that you want to ask? Whether that is for Fran, whether that is about the conference. But we're definitely taking notes on your contributions and what are some of the ideas that we can take forward.
TJ posted a response to Mandy in the chat, and I'll just take a second to welcome him. TJ and Davey are two of our primary liaisons at Think Again Training and Consulting, and they are here at the conference this week to get to meet people and learn about what we do. So we're glad you're here.
Yeah, and I'm seeing lots of additional resources being shared. If there are no further questions, I will say thank you to everybody for joining us for this first session for the presidential welcome. We're excited that we're excited that you're all joining us for this week. Thank you, Fran, for extending such a warm welcome. And I think giving a great overview of all the things that POD is doing, right? I think sometimes there's so much happening that we lose track of all the wonderful things that we have access to and the resources that are out there.
Only some of the things, there's a lot more going on.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Save the chat, because there's a lot of good information in the chat and people to contact.
Yes. And I see if Herman is unmuted, so I'm assuming you want to say something.
Just
Okay. We're just
ready
chatting
for
back and forth.
Yeah.
So thank you again so much for everybody being here. Just a few things looking forward. So the next session is a series, or not a series, but it's a group of 3 interactive live sessions that will start at 1 p.m. today. And we invite you to check that out, to join the interactive live sessions. If that time period or the interactive sessions that are offered in the next time period are not something that you're interested in, we also want to remind you there are lots and lots of on-demand sessions that are available to you throughout the conference. So check those out. The presenters have put a lot of effort into creating the materials, and I think there's always just, again, lots of materials to take away from and make our own. And so that's available to you. Later today, we have the first group of roundtable presentations. Roundtables are intended for smaller group conversations. And so you may see on the program that there is a suggested attendance limit for the roundtables to facilitate the smaller group conversations. So if you find that you are locked out because the session has reached this limit, again, we encourage you to check out the other things that are available today. They're on-demand sessions. And then for Wednesday through Friday, the Q&A sessions will be scheduled at the same time as the roundtable session. So you have a chance to follow up with on-demand presenters. And then also tonight, we have the first group of workshop in a box sessions. And what that is, it's basically our colleagues presenting a workshop as they would on their own campus to their own set of faculty or stakeholders. And so you will walk away with having participated in a workshop with the resources that you need to just take it and do it on your own campus. and with a contact to ask question too. So very excited for all the things that are happening today, and so happy that you're joining us today.
There's
And,
two more questions in the chat.
wonderful.
One is, how long are the on-demand sessions available? And the other is, will the live sessions be recorded?
Yes, that is a great question. The on-demand sessions will be available through January. So for the next 2-3 months-ish. The live sessions, most of them will be recorded. The sessions that are more conversation-based, such as the roundtable or yesterday's Birds of a Feather session, which is not technically a presentation, but it's really based on the conversations by attendees, often with breakout rooms, don't make for good videos. So conversation-heavy sessions are not being recorded. All the other ones are set to auto-record, and they should be posted within a day or so after the session occurs. So the conference team will have to take the video from Zoom, put it onto YouTube, and then make it available to you. Then that might take like 24 hours, maybe a little longer. We'll do our best to get it there quickly. Okay. Recordings will be available under this on the sketch page for the session. Yes. Any other questions that we can answer for you before you get a chance to either enjoy another morning coffee or maybe a quick lunch, restroom break, whatever you need, a quick stretch? Oh, conference Zoom backgrounds. Tammy is asking, great question about conference Zoom background. So if you're interested in the conference Zoom background, we did share that in the first email that we send out, but we can probably also make that available somewhere on the website.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it on my homepage, the website.
The on-demand sessions, Ria is asking the question, so I can quickly try to navigate to the conference website and share that with you. So let me share my screen. Here it is, and I want to share this one, share. So on the conference schedule, the way to find the on-demand sessions, you can find it in two ways. One is to filter by venue. So you can filter by venue, click on on-demand, and all the on-demand sessions come up for you. And you can see them all here. If you want to get more targeted, you just want to see interactive on-demand, you can also filter by type. So you can get on interactive on-demand, posters are on-demand sessions, as well as research sessions are on-demand. So you can see all the research sessions here, and that way you can filter by the on-demand sessions. The Q&A sessions, if you want to go there, that might be another way to decide, because you can see, for example, tomorrow, on-demand presenters are grouped into groups of similar topics. And so let's just go with advancing equity, it's the first on the list. So in that Q&A session, you will see which on-demand sessions will be discussed and that you can ask questions about. So that's another way to navigate to the on-demand sessions and find more information about them. And I will now stop sharing. Okay.
See you in the virtual lobby.
And I think that is all the questions that we have right now. We will hang out here for just a little bit longer in case anybody has additional questions that you would like us to talk about, or that you want to ask, or whatever it may be. But yes, so we'll be here for another few minutes if you have any questions. And thank you all.
This is the part where I wish I had like ordered, I could get like takeout or something, but that came in the little hotel tray with the little lit, like to get that conference feel.
Yes,
With the soup and the vegetarian option. How
right.
about
I
veggie
saw,
burgers for later.
I saw on Twitter, some groups are meeting in their conference room and watching together your address,
go.
for example, Fran.
That
So
could be-
that would be nice. You can have that catered, setting the conference feeling for your team
Mhm.
if you have one.
Claudia and Herman, if you want to save any of the full transcripts, you have to do that before you close out the session. You can set to automatically save chats, but not transcripts.
And I'm going to stop the recording.